This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is Google's Pixelbook Go. It's the latest Chromebook in their lineup, and it's more affordable than the previous Pixelbook by about $150 while moving up to a 13.3-inch display. I think a lot of folks are going to like that from the 12.3-inch, but it is a conventional laptop. It doesn't have 360-degree hinges. It doesn't do tablet mode, so that might be a little bit of a drawback if you're running Android apps. It has a magnesium alloy case, and it's very light, about 1 kilogram, which is just under 2.3 pounds, or around 2.3 pounds. So it's pretty neat. The thing is, you might not guess it was magnesium alloy at first, which is a pretty ritzy material that Surface products are often made of too, because of the curviness of all of the sides, which gives it an interesting look. But no, it's not plastic. It really is magnesium alloy. And this kind of signature grippy bottom, which I like a lot, it's pretty cool. It's available in this color, which is called just black. Okay, it's matte black that doesn't show fingerprints too much, relatively speaking, for matte black. And then there's the not pink, which is a coral color, which is really nice looking. Comes with Intel 8th generation Ultrabook CPUs, the low-end one that starts at $649 as a Core M3. You can also get it with the Core i5 and a Core i7 CPU, which is pretty powerful for a Chromebook. We're going to look at it now. So here's the thing with Pixelbooks. They are expensive relative to your average Chromebook. So I guess Google is giving us the aspirational one, because they don't actually have to sell these to stay alive like HP and Asus and all the other manufacturers do. But at least it's $150 on average less than the previous Pixelbook that is also still available, that has a more staid and posh look. I would call this one playful posh. And then there's the Slate model, the tablet, which Google has pretty much said they're not going to do anymore. So this one's a mainstream clamshell convertible with a 13.3-inch display. Most of the models have a full HD IPS touchscreen. It is glossy. The top of the line model is 4K, which is probably seriously overkill, especially considering the fact you have to go with the highest end Core i7 with 16 gigs of RAM, probably more than you need for a Chromebook, and 256 gigs of storage, but that one is $1,399, so $1,400 Chromebooks. Here we go again. This is the story with the Pixelbook. They can get kind of expensive. So that 649 model, that gets you the Core M3, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 64 gig SSD. We have the Core i5 model, which is $849, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 128 gig SSD, which is pretty powerful for a Chromebook. And using web-based programs like, say, Adobe Lightroom web version, it's sprightly, it's perky, all the things that you would expect. It's certainly fine for things like Google Docs. It's overkill, probably, for Google Docs. And the 8 gigs of RAM is enough for some hardy multitasking. This is still ChromeOS. That means you don't install applications like you did with Mac OS or you do with Windows, EXE programs. You're either going to run Chrome web browser extensions, which basically is what Adobe Lightroom on the web is, or you can install Android apps, which is still kind of hit or miss. The performance there isn't always as smooth and as good. Basically, it's running in emulation mode. And good thing we have a touch screen here, because of course Android apps expect you to have that, and using a trackpad and a keyboard aren't all that necessarily. Speaking of the keyboard and trackpad, we have Google's Hush keyboard. Yes, it really is very quiet. If that was an issue to you, or if you imagine a schoolroom full of these, oh, these are a little expensive for schoolrooms probably, and the noise and the clacking, well, you won't have that here. It's backlit and white, and the travel on this is very short. Not like no travel like a MacBook Pro or something, but very short, but still it feels very good to type on, so I don't have any complaints about it. And the trackpad on it is the usual Chromebook goodness here. Pixelbooks tend to have good trackpads, and it's pretty large, and, well, it is what it is. It's good. For networking, we have Wi-Fi dual band, and it's MIMO, and Bluetooth 4.2, and the reception on ours is even right next to a pretty powerful router. I've seen better. I was a little surprised, because obviously Chromebooks really are their most useful when they're connected to the internet, given the fact that you're using web-based programs for the most part. It's adequate. It's not super duper good. This is not available with LTE, so you have to use the mobile hotspot on your phone. Of course, it connects to Android phones very easily. You can also use that to keep your Pixelbook unlocked. Ports on this, I would have liked to have seen an SD card slot or a micro SD card slot, because obviously this one's a little more powerful than some of them and has a very nice display, even if you go with the full HD display. So for those of you who maybe want to do some photo editing and that sort of thing, well, that you're going to have to deal with mostly cloud-based methods of getting content, which is just about as much fun as doing content transfer on an iPad. Not ideal. It does have 2 USB-C ports, and it does support display out, and one of those will be used by the charger when you need to plug it in and charge it. Of course, you have a headphone jack. You won't have to charge it that often, though. One of the good things about this is battery life. They claim 12 hours, which is up from 10 hours from the previous Pixelbook. And indeed, they're not exaggerating much. On average, I got 9 to 10 hours just using it for a mix of Chromebooky things, Google Docs, some photo editing, using Lightroom on the web, and that sort of thing. A little streaming video, Google Play, all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty good stuff. You get a 45 watts, sort of fast charger. It's not like ultra fast, but they say you can get 2 hours with 20 minutes of charging. Considering how much battery life you have there, that means like 20% is going to give you probably 2 hours, which is pretty impressive stuff. Now, for those of you who are thinking of replacing a MacBook Air or some other Windows laptop, you're always going to run into the problem of the fact that you don't install full applications on this. If you do need the full Adobe CC suite with all the functionality and full Photoshop and obviously video editing, then it's going to fall short there. In terms of performance when using web-based programs, or even some of the Chrome extension apps that function, well, like apps for photo editing and content creation, performance on this is fairly good. You're not going to see all the features of the desktop program, though. Our full HD model's display is pretty bright. It's not 600 nits level brightness, but it's certainly good enough for indoor use, outdoor use, And color gamut is the usual near full sRGB and 75% of Adobe RGB. Subjectively speaking, it looks really nice. The speakers on this little Pixelbook are really good. They have bass, they have separation, they have great volume, and they surround the keyboard on each side. 2 little narrow strips make a lot of sound. So versus the old Pixelbook, while you're saving about $150, you get a bigger screen. It is lower resolution unless you opt for the 4K, but it's a pretty good looking screen. I don't think that's going to stand in your way. Newer CPU, also slightly higher resolution webcam, 1080p versus 720p. There is no 512 gig storage option here, unlike the other Pixelbook, the one that's been on the market, which is still going for it to be a little bit more high-end. You get the idea. And you get a little bit longer battery life with this. So as a sort of lateral update modernization just of a traditional Pixelbook clamshell, it does pretty well. That said, there is competition. The Asus Chromebook Flip is really popular, and that one's around $450 to $550, and that one is a convertible and all that other stuff. HP, Lenovo, they all have good Chromebooks out there that do cost less money. They might not be as cool and stylish looking, because Google does a good job with style, but you'll get certainly equal functionality for less money. So there it is, the story of the Pixelbook as always. It's the posh one, but not necessarily the most frugal buy, but some of you just want something that looks really good. And this is it. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos and hit that notification bell.